So if you're a developer, you've definitely felt it, right? This huge shift in how we work, all thanks to AI. We're pumping out code faster than ever before, but are we actually building better software? Today we're going to dive into this really fascinating new idea that explains why all that speed might just be an illusion, one that's leading your project straight into chaos.
And it all starts with this term that's been popping up everywhere: vibe coding. It's kind of this playful name for something we're all doing now, that daily dance of prompting, copying, and pasting from AI assistants like GPT or Claude. You're not programming based on a rigid plan, you're just programming based on a feeling, a vibe.
And hey, let's be honest for a second. Does this look familiar? Is your entire workflow basically just one long conversation with an AI? You've got your IDE on one screen, a chat window on the other, just shuttling little bits of code back and forth. If that's you, you are not alone. This is pretty much the new normal for millions of us.
Okay, so let's put a real definition on this. Vibe coding is basically a way of working that's built on your gut feeling, on these tiny, fragmented prompts, and a never-ending cycle of patching things up. And in the moment, it feels so efficient. You ask for something, you get it instantly, and you just keep moving. But that feeling of high efficiency is a really dangerous trap.
Here's what it actually looks like day to day. You start off with a big, broad request, right? Hey, write me a modern login page. Then, bam, you hit an error. So you just copy-paste the error log back in and say, fix this. Then you remember, oh, I need a verification code feature. Each one of these steps is a totally separate, disconnected thought. It seems super fast because the code just kind of appears, piece by piece.
But this is where the vibe completely collapses. Sure, this method might be fine for a tiny script or one simple component, but it hits a brick wall in any kind of complex, real-world production system. The very thing that makes it feel fast is exactly what makes it so incredibly fragile.
You see, this way of working leads to three really nasty side effects. Something called context collapse, another thing called code entropy, and maybe the worst one, it turns us humans into simple couriers. Let's break down what each of those actually means. Okay, first up, context collapse. The AI doesn't have your whole project's architecture stored in its head, right? It has a limited memory, a limited context window. And this analogy just says it all perfectly. The AI is like a fish with a 10-second memory. By the time you're on your 50th prompt, it has completely forgotten the critical rules you laid out back in your third prompt. And that leads directly to the second problem, code entropy. Because the AI has already forgotten the original context, its fixes aren't really fixes, they're just patches. It solves one bug, but in the process it creates another one. So you ask for another fix, you get another patch. And pretty soon, your codebase isn't this clean, elegant structure anymore. It's a tangled, chaotic mess of patches on top of patches. And this all leads to, a pretty harsh but really important conclusion. When we code this way, we're not building strong, scalable systems. We're just using this incredibly powerful new tool to create beautifully formatted but ultimately unmaintainable garbage code. And we're doing it faster than we ever could before.
So, if vibe coding is the problem, what's the solution? Well, this is where we're starting to see a huge shift in thinking. It's about moving away from focusing on the lines of code itself and instead focusing on the intent behind the code. And this new approach is called spec-driven development.
And here's the absolute key to the whole thing. In spec-driven development, or SDD, the most important thing a developer creates isn't lines of code. It's a formal, super detailed specification document. This executable spec becomes the one and only source of truth that you feed to the AI. The AI's job is just to translate that perfect, unchanging plan into actual code.
Now, this whole methodology is built on 4 core pillars. First, the spec is truth. It's not some document you write once and then forget about. Second is context engineering, which is where you bake all your architectural rules right into that spec. Third, you have process gates to make sure every step is validated. And finally, and this is the biggest one, developer transformation.
And that brings us to what all of this really means for you, for the developer. See, this isn't about replacing developers with AI, it's about elevating them. The entire role of the human in this process completely changes. You stop being someone who just types out lines of code and you become someone who designs the entire system. This comparison just lays it out perfectly. In the world of vibe coding, the developer is basically a human courier, just carrying code from a chat window over to an IDE. But in spec-driven development, you become the chief architect. You're the one designing the master blueprint that an entire army of AI agents can then go and build. So you're probably asking yourself, okay, where do I or where does my team actually stand on this journey? Well, there's a simple but really powerful maturity model that can help you figure that out and build a path forward.
There are basically 3 levels. At level 1, you're spec first. This is where you might ask the AI to write an outline for you, but then you pretty much just throw it away and start vibe coding. It's better than pure chaos, I guess. Level 2 is spec anchored. This is where the spec is a living, breathing document. If you want to change the code, you have to start by changing the spec. This is really the standard for most big projects today. And then there's level 3, spec as source. This is the ultimate goal. Here, humans only edit the spec. The code is just a compiled output, like an artifact that you never even touch directly.
You know, this all leads to a really interesting paradox. In this age of AI, the ability to just generate 1,000 lines of code is becoming trivial. The barrier to entry for just making code is lower than it has ever been. But because of that, the barrier to engineering truly high-quality, maintainable, and solid software is actually getting much, much higher.
And that right there brings us to the most important takeaway. When anyone can generate code, what's actually valuable? The value isn't in the typing anymore. It shifts upstream. It shifts to the people who can think critically, who can design complex systems, and who can write those crystal clear specifications that guide the AI. That becomes the truly irreplaceable skill of a top engineer.
So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. As you go deeper and deeper with AI in your daily work, are you consciously architecting software that's built to last, or are you just getting caught up in the moment, just catching a vibe? Because the answer to that question is going to define your value for years to come.